Hi, this is Pat Moorhead with More Insights and Strategy, and I am joined by my incredible and freaking smart co-host, Anshel Sag. Anshel, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Thanks for the kind words.
Hey, buddy, man, you're the savant. Every once in a while, I'll see some pictures that will come up of the two of us, and it's like I knew that guy. I knew that guy when you looked like you were 12, and now you're like an adult, and it's incredible. But you're killing it, man. You are killing it. I will say, when it comes to things like AR and VR and smartphones, you're a near godlike state. So congratulations.
I've had a long time to get good at it.
Yeah. So two huge events, Anshul, that you and I were paying attention to furiously. The first one was the Samsung event, and the second one was an Apple event. At the Samsung event, it was a PC event. It's like surprise.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the strategic implications of that afterwards. But they're regardless of the way that you look at it, they're definitely upping their game here. And maybe
Totally.
let's dive in on the Galaxy Book Pro. What are your thoughts here?
I mean, they really are leaning into this ultra thin, ultra light, kind of like a portable business notebook. It's definitely been multiple iterations of this design. So they've kind of figured out a way to iterate and improve it to a point where it's a really high quality notebook. I mean, the last Galaxy Book that I used was very good, and it had impeccable battery life, great performance. It was so stupid light, and I think the thickness, the lightness, the battery life are kind of what they seem to be focusing on again. But this time they've they've gone deeper in their partnership with Intel, and they also made sure that connectivity was a big part of the story as well with LTE and 5G. Although I think only the other Galaxy Book Pro has 5G, and this model only has 4G LTE.
Yeah, it's funny. I look at where they came from in this Galaxy Pro, and then I think of MacBook Pro, and they almost took a look at, hey, what in their opinion was broken about a MacBook, right? And then how are we going to make it better? There's a lot of consternation about the keyboards, and Samsung really came out with a good keyboard. I want to caveat that I haven't used one yet, but it looks like from the travel portion of it is pretty good. The other thing is, whether it's a MacBook Pro or even a Dell XPS, you drop that thing on the cement, it's going to break. There's pretty much 100% chance it's going to break or get dust in it, and it's mil spec 810G, which is kind of crazy. If you look at ports on it, even an HDMI port on there, in addition to the Thunderbolt 4 and different specifications. By the way, I was really excited when I heard 5G. I'm thinking, oh my God, 5G on a full notebook, and that's on the Galaxy Book Pro. So it was a little bit of a wah wah, but still pretty good.
That's the convertible one that has 5G. This
That's
specific
exactly.
clamshell doesn't. But what I thought was interesting was that Samsung leaned super heavily in to the idea that the smartphone is influencing the PC. I think we all see it in the industry.
In fact, let's dive into the 360 real quick.
Yeah, I think the fact that Samsung is leaning really hard into this concept that smartphone experience with driving the PC experience, and I think that helps Samsung because it allows them to basically say we're the masters of smartphones. We know how smartphones work, and we've already done PCs, so we are the ones who can really drive this smartphoneification of the PC. And I mean, right now it seems like they've done a pretty good job from what I've previously used in terms of like the Galaxy Book, and it seems like they really lean into the software side of things on this version, even though they are going full Intel this version as opposed to mixing Qualcomm and Intel.
Yeah, I like the value proposition, and TM Rowe talked about, we said next evolution of the PC, mobility, connectivity, and continuity. Ironically, sounds like a Qualcomm AC PC, yet this round it's delivered by Intel. And so I like the value proposition. I'm looking forward to trying one out to see what the difference is between what was promised and what was delivered. I think people in the Apple ecosystem really appreciate the continuity between a MacBook, iPad, and an iPhone, and watch and buds. But we'll have to see, what Samsung did. I think the bigger question. Probably the only nit that I have, right? If we're going to nitpick, I was super excited to see this has 5G. 1080p display on the Pro. It is AMOLED, which for movies and games are going to look amazing, and black shouldn't be able. Black won't drain the battery as much as non-AMOLED. But why do you think they chose to stop at 1080p, Anshel?
I would assume battery life. When you make the jump from 1080p to higher resolutions, you take a hit on battery life, both the display and the GPU. They could have gone 1440p; it wouldn't be as bad of a hit. But I think that they're also dealing with multiple screen sizes now, right? They're doing 15s and 13s, and I think just keeping the resolution lower was primarily a battery life issue. I think because if you go 4K, it's just gonna obliterate battery life.
Yeah. Were there any other things that you noticed about the two products that stood out for you?
I would say that I really thought that they want to make sure that people understand that, like you said, the ecosystem approach, to me, feels like they're trying to fill out, that gap that they had in their complete ecosystem. Because like they make good tablets too, and that was something that they had talked about, was this tablet feature where you can use a tablet as a second screen, which is very Apple-like.
Yeah.
So I think they're starting to borrow some ideas from Apple in how they integrate the PC into their ecosystem. Because honestly, if you look at it, Samsung is the only other company that produces a tablet, in my mind, that's competitive with the iPad. And they're also one of the few companies that makes a smartphone that's compatible with the iPhone. So I think that they're really trying hard to make a PC to round out that trifecta.
Yeah, let's jump into some of the strategic implications here. So I think Samsung was always capable of building a PC. It's different than building a smartphone, but just from the size of the components and the accuracy and the manufacturing of that, it's harder in many ways. Look at having to put in antennas. Size antennas like a lot of space, and in a small little smartphone, it's harder. I believe that Samsung didn't get serious about PCs because smartphones were growing. They're making a killing in their components business. And I really think it was, hey, I don't want to alienate the PC makers, my customers, who I sell a boatload of memory and storage to. And hey, I had my growth in smartphones, but things have changed. And let me flash up. This is Samsung's last quarterly P&L. IM is smartphones, and you can see the amount of revenue: 29 billion, actually 28 billion out of 65. DS or components, primarily. Well, actually, it's split pretty well between display and memory at 14. But look at the profit, right? You've got 3.37 billion, or excuse me, trillion wands, and then not making a whole lot of money in displays down there. And smartphones did pretty well in the last quarter. You can see the growth on the right-hand rail here, but still, PCs were up 50%. I don't expect that to continue quarter in, quarter out. But my big question is Samsung in it to win it? I didn't necessarily hear a commitment from TM Rowe when he was talking about it. But what did pique my interest was Gregory Bryant. He said we've co-engineered a new family of PCs that meet all the verified standards of the Evo platform. It's the world's thinnest Evo design with a custom Bluetooth enablement. He said, we're going to create a new co-engineering team dedicated to advancing mobile computing innovation, delivering leading-edge technologies, including a new micro architecture. Is this happy executive speak that we see on stages, Anshel, and is the micro architecture Alder Lake, Foveros 2, basically, or is this something different? What do you think?
I totally think it's Alder Lake. I think the reason why it's Alder Lake is because it fits perfectly into the smartphoneification of the PC story, right? Because never before have we seen PCs with multiple types of cores in them.
Yeah.
And I think this just slides right into that narrative. It's almost too easy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Strategic. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is Samsung in it to win it, right? They're in it to win it. They don't get into markets they can't win at, right? And if you look at TVs, certain semiconductors, if you look at smartphones, they're definitely in it to win it. And what I'm looking for is a hint of, do we put Samsung in the classification of a Dell, a Lenovo, an HP, and a MacBook, or and a Microsoft Surface, where they are in it to win it, or is this it's kind of a fun business? We'll get the volume and we can get it. What's your instinct tell you, Anshel?
I think based on how deeply they're featuring Microsoft and Intel, I think they're actually trying to win it. I think that they're taking this business seriously. And I think that it also gives Microsoft Intel another partner that they can rely on if other partners are not necessarily falling in line, or whatever the politics of having OEMs around is. I do think having another competitive OEM is probably beneficial both to Microsoft and Intel. And I just think that, to me, it makes sense for them to want to prop up Samsung, if anything, to get their other OEMs to move in that direction.
Oh yeah, you nailed it particularly on Intel. And Intel has always been a king or a prince maker, or a queen and a princess maker. And I've seen that for 30 years, right? They wanted Dell to win when Compaq got way too powerful. They leaned into the hyperscalers when the on-prem data center folks got too powerful. Kind of created a nightmare for Intel, given that AWS is doing a lot of their own chips now. But can't you see? And I think Intel definitely wants Samsung to be in it, if nothing else. So when I look at Dell. Dell likes to be in the consumer business, and they have very high quality XPS products, but it's all about profits, and it's all about mostly about direct, right? And then you have Lenovo, who very innovative company, but is having a hard time at the higher price points, aside from gaming. And then HP has two premium brands. They're really the only consumer only play. Not only play a consumer, they need to win at consumer PCs, where the other companies don't necessarily have to. So I totally see what's in it for Intel. From a Microsoft standpoint, does it even matter? It's another Windows license. Either Dell gets it or HP gets it. But I can't see if it goes up versus Apple. Or a Chromebook, potentially there is that movement.
I would also say that I think it's kind of Microsoft wanting to push more of the touchscreen ultra light platform, which I feel has been a little bit it's been a very niche category, and I think they want to push more towards these very portable, very light, long-lasting notebooks with LTE and 5G, where Apple still doesn't have it.
Good stuff, man. I think I've got one in the mail coming to check it out. First thing I'm going to do is, hey, it's made out of aluminum, but it's really, really light. So I'm thinking, what kind of aluminum is this? But hey, we've spent a ton of time on Samsung getting bigger into the PC business. Let's jump into the Apple event. So, gosh, earnings were astronomically ridiculous. You have a $2 trillion company with 54% growth. But the mind-boggling part to me, 79% growth in iPad and 70% growth in iMac. And they just had an event where they brought out, and we're going to drill down to this, a new iPad Pro and a new iMac. So, Anshel, you want to kick this one off here?
Sure. So, I mean, they came out with a new iPad Pro with M1 in it, and it's very interesting because a lot of people seem surprised that they would have done this, but it kind of makes sense if you think about the fact that, I mean, the old iPad chip was the development platform for the M1 developer kit. So the difference between an iPad Pro chip and M1 is probably not that far apart. So to me, it was a natural progression. I thought what was interesting was obviously they went with a very premium display on the top end version of the Pro with the XDR display. And they also integrated 5G, and they also have like a super expensive magical keyboard that they have attached to it. But overall, to me, it seems like the iPad is still in a position where people don't fully understand how it slots into Apple's their computers, and how it sits next to the MacBooks. But they've clearly come out with an iPad that is superior to all the MacBooks they have today in terms of display. And with an M1 in it, it's already as good as a MacBook, that has an M1. So it's a very weird product in terms of how it fits in with everything else. But I think they're just satisfying a niche of iPad Pro users that want the best camera capabilities, with the tracking on the front-facing camera and the crazy display, tons of storage. I think there's a 2 terabyte version of it.
Exactly.
So like that actually has more storage than any like of the M1 MacBooks do, which is weird. So there's a lot of weird things about this iPad, but overall it's a pretty solid product. It is pricey, which is another thing. But overall, they really led with this iPad as a ultra premium product.
Yeah, it's interesting. I use all these devices like you, Anshel, and iPad 10 years ago was really leaning into a lot. That's back when, Windows PCs were thick and chunky, didn't have connectivity, battery life was like 3 hours, and you could get 10 on the iPad. And since then, I've really moved pretty much over to the PC and use a giant phone, Samsung, S21 Ultra, to do a lot of kind of like in bed or snacking and stuff like that. My son Patrick, who has a hard time writing, and so he takes his iPad to school, and he's couldn't live without that. But with that said, I mean, I'm just saying that I have a respect for everything that Apple has done with the iPad, even though it's not my personal cup of tea. They certainly sold a boatload of them. My guess is primarily to students in the non-pro version. But my biggest takeaway from this announcement was that the iPad Pro finally deserves the Pro. You look at the display, the chip, the I/O, an improved keyboard, not a perfect keyboard, but an improved keyboard, and the camera that's on that thing. So I think for professional workflows that have traditionally gone from, DSLR camera or something, hey, let's move it over to a workstation for certain workloads and maybe even capturing AR content. Doing it on the same device, inside of a bracketed, API set and quality of video and content set, uh, it makes sense to me. I get it. I think it's 5G on it too, which is nuts. Particularly when I think about that connected to something like millimeter wave and uploading and downloading gigantic files in the field. So kind of an in the field, in the moment, professional creative device. I get it. I'm not saying it's better than a Surface Pro in some reasons. I mean, some ways it is, in some ways it isn't. But I was pleased with what they did. Let's move to the iMac. So here we go. We're taking the M1 into the iMac, and we are going to shrinky dink this thing down. So it's pretty much thinner than the original iPad was, which is pretty wild. So 24 inches thinner than an iPad, 10 pounds, which I didn't understand until it didn't really dawn on me until I started going through their website. Pretty cool if you're going to be carrying a desktop around with you in the house. My personal opinion was the coolest thing about this was the MagSafe and the Ethernet adapter. And I'm not, casting stones or throwing shade at Apple by saying that, but essentially it has a magnetic power cord that, when the 800 people who trip over your power cord doesn't pull your 10-pound iMac on the floor and bust it into a million pieces. The other thing it does is, if you have hardcore hard jack Ethernet, RJ45, it plugs into the power cord, and you don't actually have to plug in the RJ45 into it, and makes it look nice and pretty, which we have come to expect from Apple devices. The other thing I want to give a thumbs up on, freaking 1080p FaceTime camera. But Apple, why didn't you put Face ID on the thing?
I don't know. I really don't know.
You don't get it. Like
criticisms.
And my final complaint here, why the chin? Like, you waited 10 years for a new design, and why did you put such a big bezel and a big chin? To make it X millimeters thin? Come on, man. Funny, who did I sound like? I just sounded like our president. That was pretty
I understand why the chin exists. The chin exists because otherwise it wouldn't be so thin. Because if they wanted for it to be, a bezel-less edge display, it'd have to be thicker. So I think they prioritize thickness over aesthetic. So that was their decision, I think. But I do think it's interesting that it's actively cooled with 2 fans. And
why? There's like one fan in the MacBook Pro. There's no fan in the MacBook Air. Do you think they're testing the dynamic range and they tweaked up the frequency of it, or are they trying to get better yields on their silicon that didn't meet the thermal and power envelopes?
It's hard to know because, like you said, there's multiple reasons why they could have added cooling. I think it allows for more sustained performance because ultimately with these kinds of SoCs, you get throttling if you don't have enough cooling capacity, and the phone is probably throttling, the iPad's probably throttling. So when you have active cooling, and if you do it right, you might actually get more performance out of it, sustained in terms of using applications. I do think that it's interesting that they capped it at 16 gigs of RAM, which might be a memory controller limitation on the M1, but that also prevents it from being used for professional applications. So there will have to probably be a 27-inch iMac Pro with a next generation Apple Silicon chip in it that has more memory capacity. But in general, I think this is a great computer for a lot of kids, college students. My first Mac I ever used was actually an iMac from the '90s with the original colorful iMacs. Those were the first Macs I ever used. And in fact, uh, I had to relearn how to use computers because I started on a PC as a very young little child, and then went to school and I had to learn how to use Mac. So it was interesting to see them bring back that colorful attitude to the iMac.
Yeah, I like the colors and the choices. Hey, one question for you. You talked about students. What do you think students care that this can only run 20% of the Steam game library?
I think people who are buying a Mac are less likely to care as much about the games. They probably have a gaming console. But if they do care about games, they probably won't get a Mac to begin with.
Okay. Yeah, it was interesting. The new Macs really can't run most of the popular games out there, and I know college students love their games. So let's move on to Apple AirTag. Man, this thing was flirted with, talked about, leaked about. It seemed like a hundred times out there, and finally we are here. So, for those who aren't familiar with it, AirTag is like a little coin that you put near your keys on a key ring. You glue to the back of your TV controller to find it, and you can use your iPhone, which will essentially point an arrow in the direction of it. And even if it's not within your Wi-Fi or Bluetooth space, what it does is it piggybacks on all the other iDevices of other people. So if I lose my keys in San Diego in your house, and I left your house, I'm still going to know where it is because it's riding on the back of your network on your iPhone, which I think is very interesting. I do like that Apple put in the kind of non creepy thing that if I slip it into somebody's backpack to track them, it starts beeping, and you'd hope that it would be, the beep would be high enough to let them know, hey, creeper alert, creeper alert, somebody slipped an AirTag into your backpack or into your purse. I think they're to sell 1 billion of these. I really do. Would have been nice if they had put some sort of a hook on every one of them. But then again, I mean, you're going to have to pay Apple a ton of money to put these on your keychain and attach them to things. What are your thoughts, Anshel?
So it's interesting because this has been done before by a company we all know called Tile.
Right.
But I think Apple's going to execute it better. I think Tile has had a long time to find a way to make this happen. And I've used Tile before, but I'll be honest with you, I just haven't bothered to really go out and build out my Tile ecosystem. And I've seen Tile building into the PC ecosystem and trying to figure that out. But ultimately, I think Apple's ease of use is going to make this successful. I do think it's fairly annoying that they chose not to put any holes in the tag, so you can just put it on your keys if you want to. So they've basically created an entirely new accessory ecosystem around it, and there's going to be people who make millions of dollars just selling hundreds of thousands or millions of these tag holders. But ultimately, I think it just enriches the Apple ecosystem. And I think it's going to be yet another thing that makes the Apple platform more sticky than it already is for users.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I still use an iPhone today is the Apple Watch. And start adding more features and capabilities that make it harder to leave. I think you're finding just another thing. And also, I think the price is fairly reasonable. So I think they're trying to get people in to use this because they think it's going to be a very strong feature that keeps people in the ecosystem.
Those are all good points. What do you think about the privacy implications? When Amazon Sidewalk came out, it was like the world was ending. Amazon with Sidewalk is enabling all these Sidewalk devices to talk to each other. And if your dog has a little Sidewalk enabled keychain and it goes over to neighbor who has Sidewalk enabled, they're going to be able to piggyback on that person's network. People freaked out about it, but here we are. Amazon gives you an option. Apple does not give you the option whether to share your network. I do think that Apple has a pretty good track record for privacy and security, but like everybody, they're not perfect here. And I really didn't hear anybody complaining or bawling and squalling about any of this. And it seems like people are giving Apple the benefit of the doubt on this.
Absolutely. I have not heard the words privacy or security mentioned once in almost any of the coverage that I've seen. So I think people are taking Apple at their word on the security of this, but I also think there are going to be people who try to hack this and figure out how secure and how safe it really is, for everybody's sake. And I think in general that this is a pretty positive thing. It seems like they're trying to encrypt everything that they can and keep things as anonymous as possible. But Apple has a better track record in terms of privacy and security than most of their competitors do, with a few exceptions. So I think they've kind of earned at least some of this lack of criticism.
Yeah, they have leaned into privacy and security more than most companies. And if you look at their business model doesn't, for the most part, is not about mining personal information or selling that information or using it to buy goods with. But boy, when you look at making money, here's a $449 Hermes luggage tag. So are you going to jump on that anytime soon, Anshel?
I'm not. I'm definitely not. I think that this specific product page was a very easy target for any critic of Apple who says their products are too expensive.
Hey, I know somebody who might want it in my family.
I know.
I think we both know what her name is, and she's wonderful. She's my wife, Paula. So maybe this is her Christmas gift. I don't know, but we'll see. So, Anshel, any other things to add on the Samsung or Apple event before we bid our audience goodbye?
Honestly, no. But I will say that I did really like what Samsung came with on the PC side. We didn't talk about the Odyssey gaming laptop, but it was a new GPU that they launched with NVIDIA, which is a 3050 Ti. Right. I don't know what the performance looks like, but I don't really consider anything with a 50 to be particularly powerful. So it's not. I don't really know how much of a gaming laptop it really is. But I guess we'll see. I believe it's a pretty limited market that they're launching it in. But yeah, they also launched a gaming notebook with and a new NVIDIA GPU.
Yep. I really like Samsung stepping up their game in PCs, and I like what Apple did with iPad Pro. It's the first iPad that I consider a pro. Not for everything, not for every professional workload, but for those that engage a camera, pen, even doing AR content. I think it's a really good device and can take two workflows down to one potentially if you're into a narrow workflow. Anyways, this is Pat Moorhead and Anshel Sag coming to you, concluding another podcast here. If you like what you've heard, go up and hit that subscribe button. If you can't stand what you heard, stalk Anshel and I on Twitter and give us some feedback. We want to make this valuable for you so you keep coming back. So with that, have a wonderful weekend and take care.